I first started drawing in the dunes in the summer of 2018 after getting this book. So these are two of my favorite. This one is a great example I was talking about, and the variation of mark to create a sense of like it reads 100% like standing over a vista and looking out at a vast field and seeing the different ways the farmland is treated, and it's all within these tiny little pen marks and the variation. There's just such a relationship to looking and also such a freedom of mark making. So I was so blown away by this book that at the time I was in Provincetown, and I decided, well, let me like go out into the landscape like he did. And stripping it down to black and white, it's like Van Gogh gave me permission. It's just like, oh, just go draw with squiggles. Like, you don't have to paint this beautiful landscape, the beautiful colors it is. Like, it's already that. So why just make a painting of that, you know? I wasn't interested in drawing every single leaf accurately or even drawing a tree accurately. For me, Van Gogh showed me that the challenge could be, can you create like the feel of a place or a feel of a looking experience? So for me, when I first went to the dunes with these black and white tools, my interest right away, I was like freed up. I had the permission to be like, you can't draw that. You're never gonna be able to pull that off. So what do you do now that you can't pull that off? And I was exploring mark making in a way that I hadn't really done before in my painting work. And it gave me all this freedom to try to do things like more gesturally and more abstractly. And a lot of times, even though they're landscapes, I'm kind of still prone to looking for a narrative in the landscape, even if it means like, oh, like this cliff in my mind is kind of blowing in the wind this way, and that's like an event that's happening, or this tree is the main character of the story. So the first time I went to the dunes, the very first time, inspired by this book, I packed up a tote bag with the basic black and white drawing mediums. I had a little chair that I bought especially for going out to the beach. I had my little beach hat and everything, and I went out into the area by the breakwater. And I was unfamiliar with that landscape, unfamiliar with tides, really. And I sat down and did my drawing and was working for, I don't know, 3-4 hours, but long enough to where when I returned, the tide had come up, and it had come up like, you know, to my waist basically. And I was not prepared to deal with that, and I didn't know how to cross others, so I had to kind of pack all my gear and lift it over my head and take my shoes off and put everything up and walk through that. I didn't want my drawing to get wet, and I didn't want my drawing supplies to get wet. But you know, so I had to kind of carry it over and make it over to the other side, walking through it. And that's what inspired my painting drawing called Title Shift. So the title shift is a kind of self-portrait of that first experience. And if you see things in the water, you'll see these larger painting objects that are typically connected to like house painting, but also for me connected to being a muralist. So there's the rollers, there's the big brushes, there's these big buckets. But growing up as a graffiti artist, painting murals professionally, having a mural in Provincetown, murals play such a big part of my upbringing and my artistic identity. And there's a connection for me of painting a wall out in public space to painting or drawing in the landscape by myself. There's something urgent about that creative space where you have to make it on the spot. There's no way out. So you bring your supplies, you pack up your bags of spray cans, or you pack up your bag of ink. You find your wall you're gonna paint, or you bring your paper with you, but then you show up to the site and you work until it's done or until you lose light, and then you go home and then you come back and do it all over again. It's such a different thing than a studio practice. So I've always found a connection between plein air painting and muralism, or plein air painting and street art, down to the fact that plein air painting was only able to happen because the technology changed in paint to allow tube painting to make oils easily transportable and therefore make it easier to bring them out into the field. And in that way, the spray can, as the next technology of paint, allows for graffiti to happen out in the world, and then eventually street art to happen out in the world. So I feel like there's a really big connection, but beyond that, like my own identity crisis as a creative person, as an artist, kind of moving in and out between graffiti to fine art to video art to performance to painting to drawing to being a writer, that the title of the piece is called Title Shift, and it's based on that experience of tide, but it's also based on my relationship to the word title shift and having these various identities of an artist going back and forth from plain art air artist to a conceptual video playwright to, you know, whatever, pick and choose. So the idea that the tides coming in and out is kind of like my relationship to not only my creative practice, but I think also to the challenge of how will other people perceive me as my tidal shifts, you know.